Well, Russians created the anarchist movement. So,
Yeah,
um,
Kropotkin and Bakunin. And
um, one thing that I really wondered and that scared me, frankly, is stories of a week or so ago about how Putin went after some of the exiled Russians or one of the rock groups. I think it was
yeah,
in Turkey. I forget which country, but how
Indonesia and
how do
Thailand,
you?
actually. Yeah.
Oh, Thailand, right? So how effective is that as an instrument to like use the Interpol to attack Russian exiles abroad? I mean, if I was in the diaspora and over there and home, you think here or Georgia or Armenia or wherever, you
Hmm.
think you're London, you think you're a little safe aside from the poisonings, but can they use is he going to be able to use these legal international methods more frequently to punish those who speak out against him when they're not in Russia?
So I think it'll be more as a matter of Russian law and pressure that is put on particular countries. And we're seeing this, like in the example of the rock group, it was a B2. They wanted to try to deport them back to Russia, and they ended up going to Israel instead. So the Kremlin, through diplomatic means, is trying to pressure individual countries like Thailand and Indonesia and others, Dubai, not to allow prominent anti-war, anti-Putin performers to appear, whether they're comedians or singers. And which I think is very interesting. I mean, Putin is trying to kind of extend his repressive net in that way, which I think indicates that he feels threatened by it. It's not something I talked about a great deal in the book because partly because I feel like it's been gelling. It's taken a while, but there's really a kind of a cultural resistance now to Putin and to what he's doing with the war. I mean, very, popular anti-war groups. There's this anthem by this singer known as Little Coin, Monechechka, which all the exiles have heard. She appears in places like Tbilisi. And I think that can be effective. Sometimes, the joke or the song resonates more than, a political slogan or placard. And so the battle continues. I think of it as a sort of a Russian civil war that's actually developed in these kinds of cases. I mean, you cannot underestimate the degree of hatred on both sides for the other.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned to me it's got to be a long game though, because with the killing of Navalny and then the way the war in Ukraine is going,
Hmm.
Europe is helping them, America is iffy. You know, if they if the war just continues and continues, um, it, even though there's more resistance, uh, Putin, he seems to have all the cards. And do you do you think that these rebels can ever oust Putin?
Well, I think it'll be, unless they manage to blow up his train, I think it's going to be pretty difficult to ferment a popular rebellion. I mean, I did think it was interesting, although I wouldn't include the Wagner group of mercenaries and their, deceased leader Prigozhin as part of this group. Nevertheless, they began this rebellion in the south of Russia in Rostov-na-Donu, and from all reports, the people were not like opposed to them. I mean, maybe they were a little bit scared, but it seemed like there were very friendly relations between these mutineers and the local community. So I don't know exactly, what those attitudes might be, but I agree with you that it is a long game. I think fitting into the generational aspect of it, what you hear from the exiles is, well, we're going to outlive Putin. I mean, he's 71 years old. There's this slogan, Putin Pakajiv, while Putin lives. We're not going to go back to Russia while Putin lives, but he's not going to be around forever. If you talk to the Navalny people, his chief of staff, for example, Leonid Volkov, I heard him talk a little bit on the sidelines of a conference in New York a couple of years ago, and he was talking about, well, when Stalin died, there was this vicious scrum, and nobody really knew who was going to come out on top. So I think the more far-seeking, seeing ones are kind of trying to prepare for what they would view as the day after. Putin has no
Mhm.
obvious successor. That's the other thing. I mean, who would
Yeah.
that be? I mean, he's shown no inclination to give up power. And even when he nominally gave it up to Dmitry Medvedev some years ago, I think it was clear to everyone that Putin was still the man, and that remains the case. But, 71 years old, we'll see.
Hmm.
Life expectancy
Okay.
for Russian males is not the highest in the world.